Since before recorded history, the people of Britain have had first-hand experience of the strange and unusual. Spirits who haunt ancient castles, stories of werewolves and banshees roaming the countryside, and fantastic creatures like gnomes, fairies and pixies, all firmly embedded in our native folklore. This cultural experience makes us uniquely qualified to research these types of phenomena and help us find the truth of the reality that surrounds us. So sit back and relax as your hosts, Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson, take you on a journey through this strange realm and together help us find the answers to the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp. Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio.
Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Irene Allen Block, and here with me today, and I'm not going to forget his name because I've written it down, is Mark Johnson.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you take the time to write something down.
Yeah, I wrote it down in front of me so I wouldn't forget your name. It says Mark Johnson.
I feel so honored. Thank you. Thank you, darling.
That's all right. You'll get your award later.
Oh, that's true. Well, hey, we're only 2 weeks away from Christmas.
Don't remind me. I haven't even started yet.
Me either. It's going to be like Christmas this year.
I've got no food shopping in. I've got no dog toys in for the dogs. I've got to get my grandchildren's presents. I've got to get my kids' presents. And 2 weeks, you say? 2 weeks?
2 weeks from today, actually. We're recording this on Monday, so 2 weeks from Monday.
Oh, so Christmas Day's on a Monday?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. So a 3-day weekend for everybody.
No, better for us, because if Christmas Day's on a Monday and Boxing Day's on a Tuesday, we get another 2 days off.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to explain to people who've never heard of that, because even you and I were talking the other day. We go, what in the hell is Boxing Day? And we had never heard of it before. And it turns out...
I knew about Boxing Day because I live in the UK, but you hadn't heard.
No, you knew of Boxing Day. You just had no idea what...
holiday, but I didn't know what the boxing meant. I thought it was something to do with boxing in a ring, but you went and looked it up, didn't you?
Yes.
And what did it mean?
It goes back to the 17th century. It is referred to as a present or gratuity given at Christmas in Great Britain, usually confined to gratuities given to those who are supposed to have a vague claim upon the donor for services. Basically, in other words, for people who are working in the service, as servants for households
and things like that. Yeah.
Yes, maids, cooks, everything for the aristocracy. While the aristocracy got to celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day, the servants had to work to take care of the families and do everything for Christmas. So they got the next day off. December 26th was their day off, and that was
Boxing Day.
That was referred to as Boxing Day, where the aristocracy, the people who employed them would give them boxes, Christmas boxes, filled with money or presents, thanking them for their good service.
Yeah, or leftover food to take back to their families.
Yes. Yes, so, they got the scraps.
Yeah. They did, didn't they?
They got day-old fish.
Oh, dear.
Oh, that's okay. At least the lords and ladies, took the time to recognize the good service of the people who worked under them.
Right. Yeah.
Unlike in modern day, where here in America, in the United States, especially at this time of year. This is the time of year that everybody usually gets laid off from work and fired because corporations are trying to make their financials look better for the fourth quarter. So people get fired right before, or laid off right before Christmas time. How lovely. Welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah. So your below stairs maids and cooks and things like that who did work for your noble people.
We don't have
obviously got bugger all then.
Well, the noble people these days are the corporations and congressmen.
I couldn't say aristocracy. Yeah, go on.
Go ahead, say aristocracy. Come on, say it 3 times fast.
Aristocracy. Yes. It's a long word. I can't say it.
Aristocracy.
I'm one, but I can't say the word.
Yeah. We used to have that more here in America. Well, they still have, the rich 1%ers still have their servants, but it's not like the old days of Downton Abbey, of, the whole staff working for the families.
But obviously, if you didn't give them a day off afterwards, did you? Your lot. So they obviously didn't get their boxes.
No, they didn't do that over here. They got fuck all over here.
Unfair, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yes, it is, and still not that much better today.
It's an old tradition over here, and it still follows on. Everybody gets the day off for Boxing Day now. It doesn't have to be anything to do with our Scottish.
Well, unfortunately over here, especially people who work retail, the day after Christmas, their butts have to be into work because that's when everybody's returning all the presents that they bought, that they got, because they don't like them.
But that's it here as well. Although we've got Boxing Day, a lot of the sales start on Boxing Day in the shop. So, there are the salespeople. They do work, but they obviously get paid extra to work on that day.
Mm-hmm. No, they don't get paid extra over here. They just you're expected to show up and work long hours.
Don't get paid any extra?
Nope, not unless you're working overtime. But if you're working a regular shift that day, it's regular pay.
Oh my gosh!
What's the differences between countries? I'll tell you.
There is, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Absolutely, yes.
Well,
what are we doing then?
What are we doing? Well, we've got a very special show tonight. We're going to be doing something quite different tonight. This last week, we lost a friend and colleague, someone that Irene, you work with for how long?
Oh, several years.
Several years.
Several years she worked with me. I've known her for quite a long time now, and I'm devastated because she was one magnificent, fantastic, beautiful lady.
Well,
absolutely.
We're talking about Sunny Williams. Sunny was a longtime researcher, and she was one of the co-founders of Lights in the Texas Sky UFO group. She was very much
I think she was the founder, actually.
Okay. She very much involved in the paranormal community, UFO community. She was learning remote viewing, which she learned from you. And
yes.
and so much, and she was a very large personality. And we had the pleasure a few years ago of having Sunny on our old show, Unknown Origins Radio, and in interviewing her about her work with ufology and researching the paranormal down in Texas. So what we're going to do here tonight is we are going to replay that show. It's just an hour long. And then
from Unknown Origins Radio.
Yes, from Unknown Origins Radio. This we recorded this about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and then when that is over with, we're going to come back with some special guests who also knew Sunny very well, and we're gonna we'll talk about Sunny and her research and our own memories. So sit back and relax and listen to this excerpt from Unknown Origins Radio, which I am the host of with my co-host at the time, Lauren DePinto, as we interview Sunny Williams from Lights in the Texas Sky. You know, we want to get right into our guest tonight. I've been very happy to have this guest on. She has a great story to tell. Her name is Sunny Williams, and she is the founder of the group Lights in the Texas Sky, UFO researcher, and she's also an experiencer. So please welcome Sunny Williams to the program. How are you tonight, Sunny?
Fine, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming in and joining us tonight. Now, I've been wanting to...
My pleasure.
Talk to you. This is one of my more favorite subjects because I'm fascinated with it. We've had the opportunity on this show to talk with several experiencers over the years. Some very well known, some not as well known, but you all have you share a unique experience. And so I'd like to start at the beginning, and if you could tell us about your experiences. When did they start, or when did you first become aware of them? And, you know, we can go forward from there.
Well, I became aware that I was having experiences when, back in 2008, I had one. And I realized then that something had been going on all along. And I started putting pieces together and realized that I had been experiencing things since at least I was 4 years old. And what occurred in 2008 is I happened to see some lights, and they were behind some trees. I was at my father-in-law's, and it was a long ways out in the country. And I saw these lights behind trees, and they were about 1,000 feet away from me. And I kept watching the lights, and they would move back and forth and up and down behind these trees. And I knew there was nothing back there. And nothing but pasture and maybe a few cows. Well, these lights raised up above the trees, and when they did, they changed colors from white to red and made a diagonal red line. And then suddenly they just took off. Well, during this whole time, I'm trying to take pictures with my digital camera, and every time I would go to take a picture, the camera would shut off. I'd turn it back on, I would go to snap a picture, it would go off. So I said, heck with it, and I stuck it in my coat pocket. And I walked out a ways from the house so I could get a better look around because the lights took off, and I'm looking in the sky all the way around. I had a 360-degree view. It was just gorgeous with all the stars, and I could see jets off in the distance. And there would be one over to the east, and there was one to my south and one to my north, and I turned and faced west and happened to look more up, and that's when I saw this object. And stupid me, why I said this, I don't know, but I said, I know what you are, and you're up to no good. And about that time, the camera came on in my pocket. That like to scare the living bejesus out of me.
Yeah, with me at that point, too.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, this thing started dropping straight down at me. I mean, and it was coming fast. And I turned and I ran like I've never run before. I don't think my feet ever hit the ground. And I just flew to the house and ran inside, locked all the doors, and I stood there and shook for 2 hours. But I grabbed, my father-in-law had passed away, and he left all his guns and everything to us. He was, living out in the country. And there was a shotgun sitting there by the back door, and I picked that thing up, and I was holding it. I said, "You SOBs come in here, and I'm going to blow your asses away." And I was I was so scared.
Wow.
And, like I said, I shook for 2 hours. And then about 2 days later, I'm sitting watching TV, and I had a little puppy, and he was over in a dog pen. And I heard him whimper, and I turned to look at him, and he was backed up like he was scared of something. So I stood up and turned around, and I was facing a west window that faced the woods, which were only about 50 feet away. And there was this light in the window, and it was about 6 inches across. Now, it wasn't shining a beam into the window. It was just a light right there. It looked like it was plastered up against the glass. And all of a sudden, it darted behind the curtain, and I leaned over, and I looked, and I could see it. And when it saw me seeing it, it took off to the north, and I ran to the window and looked. I ran to the north-facing window and looked, couldn't see anything, and I thought, well, this is crazy. So, a day or so later, this is in December, and it's cold, and a couple of days later, I see that the glass is sweating. But right there where that light had been, it was hydrophobic. There was no water. So that's when I started researching this stuff. And I started remembering about times that I had seen strange lights in the sky, and once saw something crossing over the moon through the telescope. And I could tell that it was crossing directly in front of the moon because it was casting a shadow on the moon as it moved across. And at the time, this was back in the early 80s, we didn't have any probes up there that I know of. And I had seen others back when I was earlier a teenager, and then I started remembering little bits and pieces about when I was small, how I was so afraid of my mother turning the light out. I didn't have a nightlight and didn't have a lamp next to the bed. So what I would make her do is leave the hall light on and leave my door cracked so there would be light in my room. And, she assured me there wasn't any boogers under the bed, no boogeyman in the closet. Nothing.
Well, I would hope there would be no boogers under the bed. I keep tissues by the side of my bed myself. But
yeah, I'm not talking about that kind.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the creepy kind. Anyway, I wasn't afraid of anything like that. I told her I was afraid of the little men.
How old were you at this point?
Around probably close to 4 years old.
Because I was going to say is, when you started talking about your experiences in 2008,
right?
Not 2008, in the 1980s. It's usually people who have these experiences do experience them from very early childhood. So I was curious to know if maybe you had experiences, and you just confirmed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recall anywhere from 3 or 4 little beings, little men is what I call them, in my room. They would just appear, and I really don't remember anything about them other than they would show up and I would be very scared. And I don't remember, them taking me or anything like that. I have a friend who is a hypnotherapist, and he suggested, that I go through regression. And I said, there's probably a reason why I don't remember all of this. And I really don't want to. Leave well enough alone. So, right. But I've had other experiences, and one was when I oh gosh, I was probably about 17. And this was in the late 60s. I'm dating myself here. There was an object over our house. My mother had gotten up in the middle of the night to let our dog out to use the potty. And I heard her calling me. And so I jumped out of bed and I ran around looking for her and found out she was standing out on the back steps. And I rushed to the porch, and there she was, standing there looking straight up. And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "Look." And I stepped out on the porch, and when I did, there was this thing. It was so close. If I'd have had a rock, I could have thrown underhand and hit the thing.
Ugh.
It was that close, and it took up about 4 house lots. It was so huge, and it was circular and had lights going around it. What it reminded me of was a Ferris wheel laying on its side.
Interesting.
Very.
And my mother said, "Quick, go turn on the radio."
Oh, God.
So I run in the house and turned on the radio, and then the announcer was saying, "Please don't call in to the radio station, that the lines are tied up." He said, "And don't call the police station. They already know about the flying saucer." And that Shepherd Air Force Base, this was in Wichita Falls, that Shepherd Air Force Base had been notified. So, I'm listening to all of this, and I run back out. I'm standing there watching this thing, and in just a couple of minutes, I can hear the sounds of jets coming. And I mean, they had the afterburners on. They were just, scalding across the sky. And they, just as they came into view, this thing above our heads shot off, and I swear to God, it looked just like in Star Trek, where, the Enterprise streaks away and you see, this light trail momentarily, and it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it looked like to me. And it became just a pinpoint. In just like an instant, it became a pinpoint in the sky, and these jets passed right over where this thing had been, and they circled around a couple of times and then flew on back to Shepherd. Never heard anything any more about it. Didn't hear anything about it on the radio. Didn't see anything about it in the newspapers the next few days. Nothing. It was like it never happened. And the way the announcer had been talking, there had to have been thousands of people that had seen this thing. And it was like everything was just shut up. Nobody said a word. And everybody just forgot about it. And a couple of years later, I asked my mother, "Do you remember seeing something weird?" And she said, "Yeah. But I never heard anything about it." And we just dropped it. And that was it.
Wow. And there's nothing documented nowhere? I mean, no one has ever written anything down about this or reported it?
I have looked and researched it because I saw it. My mother saw it. She and I talked about it a couple of years later. So I know that I didn't imagine it. She saw it too.
Right. And your neighbors didn't see?
Evidently not. This happened between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, when the jets passed over,
right.
But there were, and that was another thing. Right after that, there was cop cars going up and down the street and the alleys and everything in our area, just, back and forth for a while. Nothing was ever said. And like I said, I have researched this, and can't find anything except for the time when I wrote into someone about it.
Sure. Wow.
You know, that's very unnerving to have those types of experiences. Mm-hmm. And, you know, most people, they can't imagine that kind of experience. They haven't had that kind of experience. Mm-hmm. And then there's those of us, you know, who wish they would see these damn things. But, you know, I've been ghost hunting for 10 years and never seen a ghost either. So, you know, as typical with most types of paranormal phenomena, they don't perform on cue.
Right.
In fact, half the time they seem to know when you're looking for them or watching them, and they purposely avoid you. Hence, when they play with your camera, and they decide to turn it on when they feel like it.
Right. Now, you mentioned jets. Do you think the government was involved?
The way they came after this thing, I don't think they were particularly involved with this.
No. You don't think they were chasing it down and, you know, this became a hush-hush situation, you know?
Well, you know, they think that we can't handle the truth, or at least that's you know, one theory.
Sure.
But, I mean, I've had other sightings and had witnesses. My husband, you said something about they don't perform on cue. Well, sometimes these things do. I made mention one evening, this has been a while back, to someone that I will probably see a UFO on my way to the town that we were headed to, and it was around Christmas time. And I told him, I said, boy, things are, we'll probably see a UFO on the way over there. Sure enough, we left town and we're driving down the highway and it's dark. And all of a sudden, my husband sees some lights. And he says, "You see that?" I said, "Yeah, I see some lights." My gosh, look at those lights. And they were strung across the sky in an, you know, to our southwest. They looked like Christmas lights hanging in the sky. And they weren't moving. They were staying in one place, and we're traveling south down the road, and I had a clear shot of it. But then we passed where some trees blocked our view, and they showed up momentarily, and the next time the trees blocked the view, and then we got past that second bunch of trees, the lights were gone. But I had looked at the stars and saw where these lights were, and it never deviated. It just hung there in the sky in this one spot. And as I said, it looked like Christmas lights hanging in the sky.
You know, it's like when they talk about the old Close Encounters movie, which, you know, for the time period when that movie came out was really spot on in a number of ways. Even dealing with, you know, the government conspiracies and cover-ups, which really wasn't a part of, you know, pop culture back then. You can leave it to Steven Spielberg, who made it part of pop culture. But even the ships that they came up with these different wild designs. Before then, everybody was used to seeing a flying saucer or a rocket ship or anything like that. And then you hit these bizarre designs with all these lights. And let's face it, a lot of the UFO sightings, people see so many of these multicolored lighted craft.
Right. Well, you know, the Close Encounters of the Third Kind is taken from some real life events.
Well, I believe that because I know Spielberg, especially in his early years, when he made that and with Poltergeist, and, you know, he consulted with a lot of people and experts in the field. And, you know, even dealing with NASA at the time, you know, he was looking to try to make it as realistic as possible.
Right. And I've read reports from that era. Speaking of these unknown craft that look like ice cream cones or, things like that, diamonds and such. So it's plausible, and it was very fantastical. I loved the show. That movie was just wonderful because it depicted the way things actually are.
Well, especially for the experiencers like yourselves, the confusion, right. the not understanding. It didn't really get into, because it really wasn't well known back then, the fact that contactees and experiencers like yourselves usually had these contacts going all the way back to childhood. That wasn't understood back then. Mm-hmm. And now we've come to a better understanding of what's happening. Now, let me ask you this. Do you ever have any understanding of why they picked you? Why are you involved in this?
I believe it's because they had been taking my mother. As I was growing up, I've had to piece these things together. I mean, it's just like a puzzle. And I've had to piece a lot of this together from fragments of memory and also from what other members of the family had told me. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd look for my mother and couldn't find her. She wasn't in bed with my dad. She wouldn't be in bed with me. She wouldn't be in the house. I would look everywhere. And I would step outside and she wouldn't be outside. I'd walk all over the yard. This would be in the middle of the night. I couldn't find her anywhere. And go back in the house and in a few minutes I'd hear a noise, open the door, and she's sitting on the porch in a daze, not knowing where she's been or what she's been doing. And she was not prone to sleepwalking. And there were times when her gown would be turned wrong side out, or her underwear, sometimes there'd be mud on her feet, and there wouldn't be any mud in the yard or anywhere. Where she got the mud, I don't know. There would be, like powder or something on her. Things like that. It was just weird. She'd just, it was like she'd be gone and then she'd show up. And my mother tried for 13 years to have a child. She and my dad, they'd gotten married and, were eager to have children, and nothing happened. My mother was about to give up, and she, prayed and prayed to have a child. Well, suddenly, here I am, and, it was right after she said that too. Like within 3 months of her saying that, she found out she was pregnant with me. After 13 years. Now, whether God decided for her to have a child or someone else heard her pleas to have a child, I don't know. But then here I am, and, I found out throughout my life that I've had certain gifts that, most people don't seem to have. They say that, everybody has gifts. Well, mine are sometimes in overdrive.
Do you think that they were responsible for your birth? And your mother getting pregnant?
Clue. I don't know. I haven't asked them. I don't know if I want to know that question.
That's pretty interesting, though.
Yeah.
Well,
The possibilities.
Well, yeah. Ask who that question.
You meant them.
You mean that your mother or them?
Well, my mother has passed.
Right.
She died back in 1976. But I'd love to be able to ask one of them. I don't know if my mother would know. And I'm afraid of the answer. So, leave well enough alone. I'm just glad I'm here.
I don't know if I would be afraid of the answer. I find it quite intriguing if that was the case. I don't know.
Well, I
Don't
guess.
you, Mark?
Well, I guess it would all depend on the experiences. I mean, you have to look at a lifetime of experiences, and again, we can only imagine it. We're not in your shoes, Sonny. So, we come off of pop culture, what pop culture tries to tell us, which most of it's wrong. And then, thankfully, I've had the experience to not only, do a lot of research on it myself, do a lot of reading. I really love the research that Dr. John Mack did and, contributed to the field with his hypnosis sessions to help bring out these, regressions of abductees, but it's different for everybody and it could be quite terrifying. Now, in your case, Sunny, do you ever have conscious memory of interacting with these beings?
Yeah. I had one episode where they showed up, and I was awake when they showed up. It was really strange. Like I said, my father-in-law had passed away, and I've been laying there in bed reading, and I was staying at his house out in the country because someone needed to be there to take care of the place because he had a lot of equipment, and the house is full of furniture, and so I was staying out there while my husband was at home, and anyway, the phone rang. Now, when I say the phone rang, and, big deal, right?
Right.
Well, there was 3 phones in this house, and each one of them had a different ringer because, one of them was a real old rotary type phone. The other one, and it was the one next to the bed. And, then there was, a couple of others that were older, but each one of them had a different sound. None of those rang, just the one next to the bed rang. And then only one of the ringers, it had double ringers inside it, and I could tell only one of the ringers was ringing, and it was really strange. Well, after it rang about 3 times, I picked it up and said hello. Well, there was no one there. Didn't hear anything. So I hung up the phone. And I'm laying there thinking, okay, now that was strange because first off, who would be calling me, after midnight? And, only one ringer on one phone.
Right.
And so anyway, I'm laying there and about 30 minutes later, it rings again. Does the same thing, and I finally answer it after several rings, and I say hello, and still no one is there, and I, hello, nobody. It was like a dead line. There was nothing, no sound. So I hung it up, and I'm, thinking, okay, now this is just getting too weird. And a few minutes later, it gets real dark in the room. And I had just turned the light off, but there was light coming from outside because we had a guard light out there. And it lit up the bedroom quite a bit you could practically read it, and the room got kind of dark, and then it started lighting up a little bit, and I looked over to my left, and there was these little beings standing there between the bed and the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't see them very well because they looked like they had cowls on, like robes with hoods. But I could see the glint from the light outside on what would be their eyes. You know, I could see just the glint of light. And all of a sudden, it was like a chant picked up in my head. You're not cooperating. You need to cooperate. You're not cooperating. You need to cooperate. And they said this over and over and over and over. And I tried to move and I couldn't. Because I was going to spring up out of bed and I couldn't go anywhere. Excuse me. So I'm laying there flat on my back and I can't budge. And this goes on. I would look over at the clock and I would see that, you know, it was getting later and later and later. 20 minutes would go by, 30 minutes went by, 45 minutes went by, an hour went by, and over. It was like torture. It was like I was being tortured. They're standing there chanting this over and over in my head that I wasn't cooperating, that I needed to cooperate.
Now, were you paralyzed and you couldn't move or respond?
I could not move. I'm laying there wide awake. I kept turning. All I could move was my head. I could turn my head and look at the clock, you know, the digital clock, the red numbers, and it, you know, it kept saying, you know, it was ticking off the time. And I'm laying there, and it was about, close to 2 hours that I've gone through this. Mm. When all of a sudden, I see this thing coming through the bedroom door. And it was so tall, it had to dip its head way down to get past the 7-foot door.
Oh, boy.
Yikes.
Yeah. And it came up to the side of the bed, and I was right in the middle of a queen-size bed. And it leaned over and its face was about maybe 6 inches from my face. And it looked into my face, and it said, "I'm here. It's all right." And I got mad. Because it said it in my husband's voice. And,
really?
You know, in my head. And I said, "You're not my husband." And somehow or another, I managed to get my left arm free, and I brought it up across my chest and flung my arm out as hard as I could, and I made a connection with this thing. The palm of my left hand connected with what would be its shoulder, and I knocked it backwards into the little guys that are standing there and into the wall, and it stood up straight and looked at me, and then it walked out, and of course by this time I couldn't move again, but I was still awake. And I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, you know, stop what you're doing, stop what you're doing. I'm not going to cooperate. Leave me alone. Just leave me alone. And all of a sudden, they left.
Now let this be a lesson to you ETs. Don't mess with Texas women.
See.
Sure. But the thing, now, here's the thing. I had a bruise in the center of my palm where I struck this thing.
Oh, you struck it. Okay.
Yeah, I hit it. I hit it hard and knocked it backwards. When I hit it, it was just like hitting bone. I mean, when I hit its shoulder, it was like I hit bone. It was so hard. And I knocked it backwards. The next day, the next morning, I called my husband and he said, you know, I'll be right out. So he came down, and as soon as he walked in the door, I held my hand out. And I said, what do you see? And he looked at my hand and he said, where did you get that bruise? I said, you can see that bruise? He said, yeah, that's a bad one. And so I proceeded to tell him what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he wasn't, I mean, he believes me because he knows I won't lie.
Right.
But he just thought maybe I might have imagined it or dreamed it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Until other things occurred where they physically harmed me, and he actually saw how they physically harmed me. And that's when he really started believing and understanding that something really was going on. And there's been times when one would pass over the house or something, and the pressure or something would push me down in the bed, but it would knock him completely out. I mean, I could reach over and push on him, hit him, shake him, yell and scream at him, and he will not wake up.
Yeah, they have a habit of doing that. Knocking out spouses or partners.
Oh. Yeah, but
Right.
Sonny, I'm curious. They wanted you to cooperate, and you're not cooperating. What did they want you to do?
I have no idea, but whatever it is, it must not be anything good.
Oh, no.
Well, I have an odd question to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
When that being leaned over and was 6 inches from your face,
Mm-hmm.
could you smell it?
Ooh,
Could I smell it?
that's an interesting question.
Kind of like it was sort of an antiseptic smell.
Mm-hmm.
Like some kind of a cleanser. I've never smelled it before, so I can't really tell you exactly what it smells like, because I can't explain it. If I ever smelled it again, you know, I'd recognize it.
Because smell is one of the most powerful memory triggers. And,
Right.
And, you know, that's something you'll never forget. You'll smell that again and instantly remember it. And, you know, it tells a lot also of what you're dealing with. Could you smell anything at all? If you can, what did you smell? It might give you some clues. You know, maybe it is a type of antiseptic. Maybe that they have to, like get their version of Perel in order to interact with our environment.
Right.
You never know.
Well, I'm
Right.
surprised you haven't asked me what it looked like.
Oh, well, you know, I was waiting for you to get to that part.
Well, when it leaned down and looked in my face, and like I said, it was just mere inches away from my face, and I was looking right up at it. It looked like a humanoid praying mantis. Had the wraparound eyes, you know, the great big wraparound eyes, and elongated face, with just a slit at the bottom, you know, for like what would be a mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And like just barely slits for a nose is all what I saw. I was staring at its eyes. I mean, here's these eyes, these huge eyes. That's something that you just don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
I can close my eyes and I can see these eyes, when it comes to visuals, I have a photographic memory, literally. I can see something and I can turn around and draw it. And, it might be years later. And I can still see it as clearly as if I just saw it just moments ago.
Now, the being you've described, I've heard of being described in many different cases very similar to yours. It almost seems like that type of being, the larger insectoid type beings, seem to be the ones in charge over the littler guys, or the grays, as people call them. Was that your impression?
Yeah, apparently so. At the time, I had never even heard of these things. I had never heard of a praying mantis type alien. The only ones that I was familiar with was like, just the little grays. Mm-hmm. And that's it. But it wasn't long after that I had an encounter with something else that, a lot of people say the grays are weird enough, and my God, the mantis, but a reptilian too. I had an encounter, a really bad encounter with a reptilian.
Really?
Yeah, I've never heard anything very good about the reptilians. They seem to be the.
How would you have described the reptilian-looking creature? I'm just curious because I have a past memory myself.
Well, I can tell you this, that some of them, yes, they do have the ability. I wouldn't say they're shapeshifters, but they do have the ability to take on the appearance of someone else, like somebody you know or somebody you love. This one took on the appearance of my husband.
Oh, gosh.
And then I realized that it was not my husband, and of course, I struck him, and I have a tendency to do that. I guess I'm very violent.
To them or your husband?
No, to them. But I struck him, and the facade was dropped, and I saw him for what he really was. And how can I describe him? He looks a lot like a raptor.
Oh, okay. So more like a dinosaur type. Okay.
Well, not so much. I mean, lizard-like, but humanoid. He was humanoid. He was very powerfully built. I mean, broad-chested.
He walked on two legs.
Oh yeah. He was upright and everything. But he was scaly. And his scales were kind of iridescent. They were reddish and had some green and gold. And he had on some type of a uniform. And now I didn't get to see whether he had a tail or not, but he did have these knob-looking things on his head. That like a crest of some sort.
Oh gosh, scary.
And, yeah.
I'll tell you, if someone were to come visit me for the first time, I'd want one of those. I would like one of the Nordic type, handsome, blonde aliens to come to me. I really, just to put it out there.
Well,
right.
Because everything you're describing, I don't want that in the middle of the night.
No. But see, I don't know that I've ever seen anything, that looked just like us. Now, they did show me one time, the Grace did show me, I don't know if she was my clone or if she was a child of mine. But she looked like me at about 20 years of age. The only difference is she had, larger than normal eyes. And when I saw her, I thought it was me. In a way, you know, or of me. I knew that she was of me.
Right.
Now, whether she was a clone or a child of mine, I don't know.
Let me ask you a rather sensitive question, and you can, think about how, or if you want to answer it, that's up to you. But do you ever remember a time in your life where maybe you thought you were pregnant and then later you weren't, or had any kind of situations with your cycle that seemed very odd or out of the usual?
Several times, yeah. There's been at least 4 times that I can recall, that I'm sure of, that, I knew, every time I've got 2 children, I was knowingly pregnant 3 times. I lost my first child. But that my 2 living children, with all 3 of them, I knew when I was pregnant, and with these others, I knew when I was pregnant. You just feel it, and your menstruation stops and all this, and I felt life. And then with the others, it just ceased to be. It was gone. And that's bothered me for a very long time, that the thought that I could have children out there, that I will never see. And for some reason or another, I was shown this girl, and like I said, she looked just like me, exactly like me at 20 years of age. The only difference is she had these large eyes. And her eyes, a lot of them say, oh, well, the hybrids have blue eyes. She didn't have blue eyes. I have brown eyes. She had brown eyes, but they were large brown eyes.
Now, with these experiences that you've had, are they still continuing today? Are you still having experiences? Or if not, when was the last time you had an experience?
About 3 months ago. I can tell when they're, going to be here. I feel them. And then weird things happen. I had an implant that was behind my ear for years. I didn't know that's what it was. It was just a bump behind my right ear. And then, one time I woke up, went to wash my face and, comb my hair and everything, and I put my hand back there and the bump was gone, and instead there was like an impression, a hole, where it was just gone. And, but it had been there so long that it left an indentation where it had been. They've tried to put implants in me several times, and that's the only one that ever took. That's the one that stayed the longest. The rest of them tend to work their way out. I had one work its way out, and it was strange. It looked like a teeny tiny little donut with little wires, and it was, like drilled out in the center, and it was so tiny. And when I managed to get it out onto a piece of paper, and I went to pick it up with a pair of tweezers, it kept jumping from the tweezers.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I would reach down with the tweezers to pick it up, and it would jump God. 3 inches. And so I managed to finally get it. I put my hand down on it and held it down, and scooted it off into a plastic bag and zipped it up. And I wrote on there, the date and everything. And then I had a cup that had some letters that appeared one morning. These letters just appeared inside this cup, and no one seems to be able to read these letters. Don't know what they are, but they're very strange. They, they're like ancient writing or something. But anyway, so I stuck this thing in that cup and set it under my TV stand. Well, the cup's there. Everything else is gone. They showed up and took it.
Boy.
Jeez. That reminds me of stories that I've heard also from both Whitley Strieber and Stan Romanek, who they've had implants that they've had to try to get surgically removed, and the damn things burrow in even deeper, or they avoid the scalpel, and they just don't cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I understand.
We're coming up towards the end of the show tonight, which is a shame. And I'm going to tell you right now, Sonny, we are definitely going to have you back soon, because, we need to not only talk more about this, but, your experiences also as a paranormal investigator and a UFO researcher. Now, before we get going, can you tell everyone where they can find the name of your group and where they can find your website or how to get in touch with you?
Okay, it's Lights in the Texas Sky, and it is lightsinthetexassky.blogspot.com. I've had that so long, I might as well just keep it that way. Also, if you need to, you can email lightsinthetexassky@gmail.com. And if you have a report, if you see anything, if you have an experience, and you need someone to talk to that will listen and not laugh at you, we take things seriously. Our group really cares about people, and we know that people go through a lot, and they need someone that, will listen. So just get a hold of us, and we'll do what we can to help you.
Well, that's great, and definitely we'll have you come back and talk more, and we'll help get more exposure for you and your group. I find the subject fascinating. There's so much research that I want to do. I've never, had an experience. I've never seen a UFO, but yet for some reason, I just feel drawn to it, and so I definitely look forward to discussing it with you further.
Well, anytime, Mark, just let me know.
Okay, well, and thank you for being our guest tonight, Sonny, and thank you, everyone.
You.
And we're back with Paranormal UK Radio. Irene, that was a, kind of a heart-tugging interview with Sonny.
Oh, yeah, hearing her voice, it's kind of knocks you for six.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard when a friend dies and passes on. I mean, we've in fact, this has been a hard year, 2017, or within the last year or so, there's been so many people that we've lost personally, our family, we've lost family members, and it's always hard when we lose researchers in the paranormal and UFO communities. And, it makes you wonder, like, okay, guys, well, now do you have the answers? and can you share them with us?
I think Sonny had the answers from the beginning.
Yeah. I tease with my brother. I yell at my brother all the time. It's like, okay, you're over there now. Cough it up. Let's hear it. I want to know. And you know what? He doesn't answer me.
That's the same with my mother. She went a couple of months ago.
Yep.
Well, and she doesn't answer for some reason. I think she's still got the pip with me.
It's like, okay, guys, beef's over, life's over. You're on the other side now. Let's start sharing. Let's get some information. We need some two-way communication going here.
I think with Sonny, though, she will I don't. It's not so much sharing with Sunny. Sunny let herself be known because she was full of mischief. She was full of mischief. She used to wind me up, right, left, and centre. And already tonight we've had some weird stuff happening before we even started doing the show.
Yes, we have. It's been very strange. Well, why don't let's introduce our two guests that are here with us tonight. Both knew and worked with Sunny. And so we want to introduce, first of all, Connie Churchill. Connie works with Lights in the Texas Sky and knew Sunny personally very well. Connie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to be here.
Hello, Connie.
Oh.
And do you want to introduce our second guest?
Sheila Scott. And Sheila Scott worked with me and Sunny on SRI, Spirit Rescue International. Hello, Sheila.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you.
So we've all got some very, very good memories of Sunny, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will mention we've also had Sheila on our show in the past too. So talking about her work too. So yeah, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about Sunny. Connie, when did you first meet Sunny?
I met her in 2009, I think it was. Yes, 2009. My sister had a sighting about 40 miles from here, and we talked about it and wrote it down, and I said, I want to get this on the books. I want to find somebody in Texas that does this, that takes these reports. So I found Lights in the Texas Sky. I sent in the report and sent a couple of screenshots from the geographical area and stuff. And she picked up the phone and called me right away. And everything fell into place then. Our friendship was, oh, wow, it was wonderful. She lived 6 hours away, so it was probably 3 years before I actually got to personally give her the first biggest hug ever. And we would talk hours and hours and hours every time we got on the phone. So, yeah, it was a few years before we actually got to see each other, but we met around that time, 2009.
But you were saying to me earlier, Connie, that you were meant to meet her.
Yes, that was destiny. When I was in junior high, I was bound to determine when I get big, I'm going to change my name. And I would write Sunny all over my notebooks and my book covers, and I could write a real pretty W. So my last name was going to start with a W, Sunny Williams. That's going to be my name when I get big. And then when I sent in this report, and she emailed me back one or two times, and I saw her name at the bottom, I was just floored. That was just the coolest thing. And then when we got to talking on the radio, on the TV and on the telephone and stuff, it was just too much of a coincidence. We had very many coincidences, and synchronicities would just pop up left and right between us. It was just amazing.
Yeah, so you were definitely meant to meet each other.
Yes, we were meant to meet.
Mm-hmm. And Sheila, you met Sunny through working with me and Sunny on SRI, didn't you? Spirit Rescue International.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And I was always very impressed with her ability to sort of just zoom in on what the problem was right away. So she intuitively knew what the issue was, like what to do about it. So that was always very impressive. And I really appreciated her for that.
Yeah, and another thing, she never took any BS, did she?
No, that's right. Yes, if anything started, she would just land on it right away, and you heard about it.
Especially me.
Yeah.
I stepped out of line, and it was like a slap around my head from out of nowhere, would suddenly happen. Behave yourself, Irene. Pull yourself together. Do it like this, Irene. Don't do that, Irene. But she was always there. She always was there for all of us. That's one great thing about Sunny. Yeah.
Yeah. Very compassionate.
Yeah. Yeah. And when the emails, when she was working on the clerical side as well, any emails that came in, she could tell straight away whether they were a load of rubbish or somebody out just for attention, and whether it was lies. She was really, really good at that. Really good.
Yeah, that's true. And again, I was always very impressed with that she could read it and go, oh no, this person is not sincere, or they're pulling our leg, or this person really does need help. So that was always very very helpful.
And Mark, how did you meet Sonny?
Well, again, through SRI and working. I came in at the tail end there of SRI and worked with Sonny and Sheila and some of the other people that you had with you at the time. And she was always, like you said, she took no gruff from anybody. Very opinionated, and she stood her ground. I think that was that Texan in her. And but yeah, we had a lot of great talks about some of the things that she worked on down there in Texas, and working on some of the cases with SRI. So, and then talking, of course, on Facebook, and she was again, very strong opinions on Facebook. In fact, I think she and I didn't talk for about a year or so there because we got PO'd at each other. Because two equally strong-willed people. But, she was great, though. She was really great, and we're all going to miss her very much.
Yeah. She was honest. Very honest. Very honest. She knew what she was talking about, when she did get a lot of backlash from people in the UFO circles every now and then, but she used to just brush it off.
Well, again, she was very take charge, take no prisoners, and she was kind of lacking in finesse. Let's put, I guess, is a word to say. So she just went in, was very matter of fact, and I think some people would take offense to that, and but what you would get is brutal honesty from her.
Yeah, she said whatever she said, she meant, and that was the main thing. And there was nothing you could do to change her mind.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, she was a fantastic person. Absolutely fantastic. So, Connie.
Yes.
What's the funniest thing that you can remember about Sonny?
Well, I drove up to Breckenridge from here in South Texas. It's over a 6-hour drive, and picked her up. Yeah. And we drove out to Tyler, Texas. We did this for 3 years at their conference at Tyler, Texas. And she turned some heads when she started talking about remote viewing and then our investigations and stuff. She turned some heads, but the really interesting part was when we went to the after hours in paranormal investigations of these houses or homes or museums that we are. One was cafe. It was just amazing. She was actually channeling. She had no idea she could do this. It just happened. And
really?
After the fact, everything that came out of her mouth was true. And it just blew people away. Very strange things happened that night. Those little Raggedy Ann K2 dolls that light up?
Yeah. Okay,
well, you program it to light up on the arm for yes and somewhere else for the no. And they were asking this Raggedy Ann doll questions, and it was lighting up yes and no. And she turned to me and she said, I feel something really bad is here. Something really bad is in this building. And the other little young... they weren't professional investigators at all. They were a bunch of rookies. We're asking all these silly questions and stuff, and that K2 doll lit up left and right and just threw a big spark, a big ball of light, and struck one of the other girls in the shoulder about 4 feet away. Wow. And Sonny was right. There was something ominous in that building. And we stepped out for a little bit, and she came back in, and she literally channeled then a woman's spirit that was, there was some kind of strange death or something that had to do with that cafe, and the killer worked there, and it was mind-blowing. Yes, mind-blowing.
When she was channeling, was it as she was speaking as a person, or was she like receiving the information and relating it?
She stood there and she was on the outside of a little circle here that we had. She was standing there, and all of a sudden she just felt this sensation coming up inside of her, and she felt what that woman was feeling at the time of her death. She was trapped in something small and contained in some dark container place, and she felt the pain, she felt the agony, the scared, and then she started talking, describing what she could actually see where the man drove her to, and after that it was kind of black. But she was feeling, and she was saying the words of the woman. The words of the woman was coming out of her mouth.
You know,
and that had never happened. We were floored, and she said, "Connie, that has never happened to me before." And I said, "Yeah, where did that come from?" She said, "It just happened."
Yeah.
And after the fact, we found out all the information was true.
Did she ever tell you that I mentored her?
Yes. Oh, yes. She was very proud to be one of your...
Sorry, I didn't hear you there. Sorry. What was it you said?
She was, yes, she told me that you mentored her, yes, and she was very proud that you were her teacher.
Yeah.
You taught her well.
I hope I did.
Well, she took it and ran with it anyway, didn't she?
Yeah, she certainly did. Yeah. She was a good pupil. You know, she would listen. She actually would listen to what I had to say. And that was good. Unlike some other people that I mentor.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Are you referring to anybody in particular?
Yes, you.
Did she ever say to y'all, "Well, bless your heart"?
Yeah. Oh, I loved that. Yeah, she would always say that, wouldn't she, Sheila?
That's true. Yep.
A lot of times it had a different meaning, though.
I know.
The southern, yes.
Yeah, another, they were replacements for 3 other words like kiss my...
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that right.
She'd say that sort of thing as well. No, she would. She was absolutely fantastic. A fantastic person. She's going to be a great loss.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really fascinated by the case that you were talking about with her channeling. Are there any other cases that you worked on with her that you can remember?
Well, there was an incident here in Three Rivers. We had the orange orbs one night. I was outside with another friend of mine north of town, and one by one these orange orbs started turning on in front of me and him, and it was less than a half of a mile away. We know that because there were other people that witnessed it, and we triangulated. They were less than a half a mile away, and we counted 21 of them in a little over 30 minutes' time. And just, that was just amazing. So I called her while we were still standing there after the fact. And she said, "If that ever happens again, you're going to have to call me." Well, the next night, in the same place, 11 of them started up. And I called her just immediately and didn't tell her where I was. And I said, "Sonny, something's happening. Find me." And she could remote view where I was and tell me what was all around me. And she honed in on the orange orbs. And she didn't know it, but I was grabbing a camera and an iPad and whatever I had, and I was running towards them. And they were about a half a mile away. I wanted to get closer and get some pictures. And she said, "Whatever you do, don't go there, Connie. I'm getting bad energy, bad feeling from this." And something's telling me, "Don't go there. You can look, but you can't come. Don't get any closer." So I stopped where I was, and tried to take some video. None of it really showed up very well because I just didn't have the kind of equipment that I needed. But she could hone in on things like that at the drop of a penny. Just right now, she could be there in her remote viewing.
You know, that's very interesting, and I know we're talking about Sunny, but you know, being a paranormal show, I also have to ask questions on the paranormal incidences or even UFO incidences people experience. Now, she was picking up that these balls of light were negative, or they had a malevolent aspect to them.
They did, yes, and she was getting the message that. Telling me I can move, I can look, but stay where I am. I have no business going any further. And I counted 11 that night. There was 21 the first night, 11 the next night, and the third night I thought, what are the chances? I went out the third night and I only saw one, and I ran out to a point of opportunity there where I could possibly get a better view, and I saw no more after that. But that was in February of 14. Yeah, 14. 3 nights in a row. I was looking back at her website, and in 2013 there was 3 nights in a row in February in Abilene that they had the same things, the orange orbs. But yeah, she found a negative energy aspect to it.
Yeah, but when you're remote viewing, you can pick up all that. You can pick up, yeah. So that's one side of remote viewing. Whereas if you're standing on the ground just looking at it, you wouldn't, unless you got a gut feeling that they were negative, you wouldn't pick up on it the same way. So, and Sheila, we worked many cases, didn't we, with Sunny?
Yeah, that's true.
Remember any in particular?
Well,
Well,
I'm trying to pick one that stood out. There was I believe there was a woman who was having haunting in her home, and Sunny was able to sort of pick up right away what it was, and she actually cleared it at a distance.
yeah,
You know,
I think
very.
wasn't that her first distant clearing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she learned that from you. So so yeah, and she went ahead and just you gave her the go ahead, I believe, and she did it very quickly, and the lady was amazed, and Sunny was amazed too, I think, because it worked so well. And
I think the woman involved actually felt it as it happened.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it was like quite a distance.
Yeah. And so that was fascinating for me, and to hear about that, and the lady did confirm that after Sunny had worked on her place, that it had the entity, whatever it was, and that had been threatening the house and her family, had gone and never returned. So that was something. So that was exciting to hear, because that's really what our work is about, and to help people. And Sunny was brilliant at it. So
that's another thing I liked about Sunny, the fact that she stood on both sides. She worked with UFOs and things like that, and she also worked with spirits and ghosts and demons and all that sort of thing as well. So that was amazing. It's like me now. I only work on that second side. I don't really work on the UFO side. I've seen UFOs, but it's not something that I'm really interested in. So
that makes one of you.
But there is a strong connection between the two. Many cases that we worked, we'd be called in because of paranormal problems in the house, and if you remember, I can't. There was, I think this lady was in Texas as well. I'm not sure. Paranormal problems in the house, but it also stemmed that there was a lot of UFO activity outside the house and stuff going on in the grounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, there was and I think that's where having Sunny around was really handy because of her working on both sides like that, you know, and we were able to serve. I'm getting tongue twisted again. We were able to solve a lot of cases, whereas I may have just gone in and looked at the paranormal side and totally ignored the actual fact that there was UFO activity connected to it. But with Sunny, you know, she would turn around and say, well, there's something going on outside as well, and one thing or another, and then we'd put it all together and try and do something with a whole lot of it. You know, you can't get rid of UFO activity. You can't get rid of demons. You can't destroy demons. You can only try and calm it all down.
Calm it down, or get it to move out to another location.
Yeah, sort of thing. Shove it out. Frig off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, for
Frig
me,
off or I'll zap you.
and see, for me, and as I've mentioned on our show before, how my interests have changed over time, because starting off with just purely paranormal research, it's now morphed into researching all sorts of different types of phenomena, because we are finding that interconnectedness. And you know, I'm really intrigued.
And he's got that from me too, people.
You know what? I think that Irene feels like she's not getting enough credit. What do you think, Sheila?
Oh, I'm going to take the fifth on that one, but no, I Irene, you're the leader.
Like Mark says, you know, together our views have changed on the paranormal. You know, we look more towards a lot of other stuff, interdimensional, time slips, this, that, and the other now, don't we, Mark?
Things aren't as simple as they used to be, because we're waking up to the fact that how complicated things are. And it's like the case that, you know, Connie just mentioned, and Sheila, Sunny's thoughts on it, on being something like, you don't want to mess with this. Or are you dealing with some type of extraterrestrial entities? Are you dealing with something else? And you know, it's not like you're looking at ships. You're looking at these orbs, these lights, which is very common these days. I mean, a lot of people are seeing this type of aerial phenomenon. And even in, you know, some famous cases, like at the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, they've talked about how they see these balls of light that seem to have an intelligence, and in some cases can be very malevolent. You can feel the negativity coming off. So what in the hell are these things? You know, that's what I find really fascinating these days. And it's cool that, you know, she was able to remote view these types of phenomenon and come up and get those feelings on it. Like, hey, this is something we don't want to get too close to.
You're talking about the Skinwalker Ranch, you know. I wanted to remote view that. That was one of the biggest rollickings I ever took off of Sunny. Skinwalker Ranch.
Why?
You're not doing that, she said. There's no way you're doing that.
Well, the other one I think she told us not to as well, was we were talking about the Dulce, New Mexico base.
Oh, yeah.
And Sunny at the time was saying, no, don't do it, because there was a lot of talk about remote viewers being targeted for trying to see into that base.
Yeah.
That things could backfire.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to still do it. I'm not sorry, but I'm doing it.
No, we're not doing it, people. So anybody listening, no, we're not doing it. No worries from any agencies here. We're never going to do that. No.
How do you know I haven't already done it?
Well, you know, I'm just telling our listeners that, you know, we're going to be good.
Yeah, no lettered agencies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't want Brian Bowden sending any lettered agencies after us, so. Bang, zoom! This is a goblin-free zone. Nah, I have to take those pot shots. But anyway. Yeah. Sunny was, she was very strongly opinionated about that type of subject and what you could look at and certainly what you should avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she's certainly her own person, Sunny. Absolutely fantastic. And do you know something? I know, Connie, that you went and saw her just before she passed over. But I tell you what Sunny was like. Right, October, my mother died. So leading up to October, about 2 weeks leading up to October, Mum really started to go downhill. And Sunny must have been ill at that time. She must have been ill. But she wasn't bothered with that. She was more bothered with what I was going through. She never ever spoke to me about what she was going through. All she was worried about was what I was feeling and what I was going through. And this is the type of person she was. And, of course, I was so wrapped up in my own emotions at the time that I never picked up that Sunny was having problems either. You know, that she was having worries and things were happening to Sunny because I was too wrapped up in myself and in my own emotions with losing my mum.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, Sunny went into hospital.
That just speaks to her character as regarding, regardless of what she was going through, she was genuinely concerned for you, what you were going through with your mom and your family, and she was there for you, even though she was going through something hard herself.
Yeah, she was going through hell, and yet she never mentioned it. She never mentioned it to me. You know?
Yeah.
And that really hit home when I did find out how ill Sunny was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's a testament to her character. I'll share a little story here that some people might roll their eyes at or, think is BS, but, with things that I've been working with this last year, I was trying to do a journey the week before, a couple days actually before she passed. And I was trying to reach out to her. And at least in my mind's eye, I got a hold of her. And I told this to Irene and Connie, you can tell me if this doesn't sound like Sunny or not. But I reached
at this particular time, Mark. Let's get this straight. At this particular time, Sunny was unconscious.
Right, she was unconscious in the hospital, and I think she passed a day or two later.
2 days later.
So yes, so I had reached out in a journey, and I connected with her. It was very brief. It was just I asked her how she was, and she said she was fine. And I said, will you need help crossing over, or do you know the way? She goes, oh, I know the way. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. and then she goes, oh, yeah, and tell Irene I said hi.
And that was Sunny. That was Sunny. Yeah. That's what she was like. She wouldn't. As soon as he told me that, I knew he had connected with Sunny.
Yeah.
Literally knew.
It was just a thing. I asked her, I offered help, and she said, no, I got it. And I go, okay, that's great. As long as you're good. I'm, just want to make sure you're okay. She goes, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Tell Irene I said hi.
Yeah. So that's the lady. And she was a lady as well. 100%. 100%. A magnificent person. I was proud to know her. Proud to work with her. I'm going to miss her.
Yeah. She'll be around.
Y'all.
What's that, Connie?
She loved all of y'all. She really did.
Yeah. I don't know who's going to tell me off now.
Well, I tell you off all the time, but you just ignore me.
You're not the that's you and
I'm not as intimidating as Sonny was. She could give you a right.
When Sonny tells you off, you listen. You know?
It's true. Yeah.
You quake with fear.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
So, is there anything else you can add to this, Sheila?
I'm just trying to think of. I remember one time when she was trying to get us all organized and the group, or doing different tasks, and we were having way too much fun, sort of razzing her a little bit, and she was getting a little. I could just tell she was being very diplomatic, but at one point she was saying, "Okay, that's it," and we were just having way too much fun, having her on, and because we did want to be organized and follow her plan, but I just had to laugh because eventually she said, "Okay, that's it. I've decided that you were doing this and you were doing that," and it was like, oh, she's really serious about this, and we better listen, because the tone of her voice changed, and I went, I think she's a little upset, but it was for the good of the group. And she was trying her best to make sure the group was running as efficiently and smoothly as possible. And because she was very good at that. But we were kind of taking the mickey out of her and at that point. And she took it very well. I can remember, then it just suddenly came like, okay, enough with the funny stuff,
Yeah, but we all got a psychic slap on the face for that one.
Yeah, we did. All of a sudden, oops. Yes, that stung a little.
Yeah, but she had to organize us because we were such a big group. There was so many of us. And, there was one particular month, I remember, just before I disbanded everything, that we were doing 28, 30 cases in a month. Mm-hmm. So we had to be organized. We literally did. We had to make sure that they were genuine cases, and this is where all the medical side of it came in. Mm-hmm. And
well, that was the one thing with SRI, is very thorough in pre-investigation and doing the background and the research on cases before we took them. And, making sure we are dealing with a genuine case, not just somebody who's watched one too many television shows. And, some of the cases that we worked on, we had some surprising results. I mean, Sheila, you remember and this doesn't have anything to do with Sonny, but the one case we worked on where we had to hypnotize Irene.
Mm-hmm. Yep. God. That was interesting.
To say the least.
You're very good at it.
Now I'm getting embarrassed.
No, don't be embarrassed. Then.
No, it was, Irene, you were the one who said you were pretty much told that we had to use this route to do it.
That's right, yeah. And,
you were.
And I was hypnotized by Sheila.
And the one problem we had is, this is the one thing when you're dealing with Irene, is she's just incorrigible and always has been. And she doesn't follow instructions very well. So that's
why Sonny used to be good with me.
Yeah, that was it. Maybe Sheila and I were being too soft with you that night because you wouldn't come out of trance.
Yeah.
And this really playful imp came out instead. Mm-hmm. It took us like 20 minutes to get her to wake up.
Yeah. And you were having conversations with her. So you lit a cigarette, you were smoking, and and it was we knew at one point you were not back, and it was that was funny.
Was that when my legs went up the wall?
Yep. Yeah. You were laying on your back and you were dancing on the wall.
On the wall, yeah, because that's you just felt like doing that. So yeah, that was funny, and that's when we knew there was a problem.
Yeah, and if Sonny had been there that day, she would have said, "Pack it in."
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. But the group was so good because we had the eclectic, such an eclectic background that we could do these things where other groups may not have the resources, and Sunny was such an amazing resource because she had so many skills.
Yeah.
So that was a blessing.
Well, we were made up from all different backgrounds. We had nurses.
Yeah.
We had access to doctors. We had people that checked the geology, the earthquake, the weather, everything.
Mm-hmm. While we're here and discussing it, Sheila, tell, just for the listeners of the show or people who may not have heard your prior interview with us, tell everybody a little bit about your own background.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We're giving you a plug here, free airtime here, so plug yourself.
Yeah. I am, I was trained as a nurse, and I've actually been a nurse for like 36 years. Yes, I am that old. No, I started nursing school when I was 4.
You're young.
36 years, anyway. And I'm also a hypnotherapist and a spiritualist minister. So, because I was always drawn to the spiritual side of things and metaphysics, and I learned a lot with the training that was provided. So, that was my background. And I've been involved in spiritualism since the mid 80s. Yeah, so that's me.
Connie, what about a bit about your background? And are you still working with Lights in the Texas Sky?
I forgot to interject a while ago. Sunny was only about 5'1", very small. She was a very petite little lady. And I would make fun of her because she wore army boots. That little lady wore army boots. And every on another remote view or whatever, we were thinking about going sky watching, and I'd say, well, you don't forget to put on your army boots, because she seriously did. I saw her walking around in the yard before in her little army boots.
Yeah, she was some lady. She could drive a motorbike as well. You know that, don't you?
Wow.
She used to ride a motorbike, and she could beat any man at playing pool. I think it was pool or billiards. What was it?
Oh, yeah.
It had a stick anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, she got the better of me many times. Yes, she did. I bet you couldn't outshoot her either on a firing range.
Yeah.
It's it's a shame I couldn't take her up on that, because I'd give her some stiff competition.
And
really?
Do you know something else, Mark? She could cook.
Oh,
she could
yeah.
literally cook. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was one thing I always wanted to do. And I said to her one day, I'm going to come over there one day and you're going to feed me some food. She said, I'll feed you all right. Yeah, she was brilliant. She was an all-rounder at everything. Literally everything.
I have to mention something here. There is an electronic candle. I have my downstairs here decorated for Christmas. There is an electronic candle that is on. I did not turn it on.
Huh.
Really?
Yep. I'm looking at it right now. It's like, wait a minute, why is that on? It's been daytime.
Well, I was telling Irene the other day on Messenger that I have a little light that when you walk in front of it, it's a motion detection thing, and I'd have a little night light then when I walked into the room. Well, I took it and turned it on its face. It's battery operated. Turned it on its face, and it turns on by itself a lot lately.
That would be her.
Yeah, I was going to say, has it only been lately, like in the last week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, it's only since Sonny's been gone.
Yeah.
It's been happening.
Yeah. She's making the rounds, letting people know she's fine.
Yeah. I'm just wondering what I'm going to get. You lot get lights, I get a clout around the ear.
Yeah. All of a sudden, smack.
Oh.
Gertie will start barking at somebody who isn't there.
She's been doing that. She has been doing that.
Oh, that would be sunny.
The earlier question I had also for you, Connie, is are you still working with Lights in the Texas Sky?
No, I do take reports from time to time. People will message me, and I'll write stuff down. I guess I need to either carry the torch or find another place to transfer some of these sightings to. I deal with them personally, but it's just people that I know. I'm not really out there to take reports,
Right.
and I have no access to their website.
Okay. Now, have you?
Maybe in my dreams she'll send me the passwords.
Hopefully, Sonny, if you're listening, we need the passwords to the website.
She could do it too. Yeah.
She could in some form or fashion. I bet she could do that.
Oh yeah. Easily.
Oh, good Lord.
So she had 2 little dogs, didn't she? What's happening with the 2 little dogs now? Is her husband keeping the 2 little dogs?
Yes, the husband has them. Now the dog grooming, the lady that does the dog grooming is a very, very good friend of hers. As a matter of fact, she went to the last conference with us in Tyler. And she's going to make sure that they're okay, that they're dressed and fed, and I think the dogs will be just fine. The nurse at the hospital said if I could even find a way to sneak those dogs in here, I would surely sneak them in the back door in her room. Her room was just 2 doors from the back door. She said, if I could just sneak those dogs in here without having some kind of ramifications, I would have them in here in a heartbeat. We couldn't figure out a way without getting into bad trouble.
Well, yeah, it's a shame because they even have therapy dogs now, or they even show where people are allowed if they're on deathbed, hospice, they allow the dogs to come in and with them, and it's so therapeutic that
I would have loved to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gertie, when Mum was in continuous care in a care home because she was paralysed. And Gertie, from the time I got her, she was going up there. And my other little dog, Pippa, as well. And obviously, we used to put Mum's hand on her, so hoping that she'd realise that Gertie was there or Pippa was there, because she was very fond of Pippa when she was... before she became ill, she was very, very fond of my little dog, Pippa. And... But the nurse used to come in, she used to take Gertie off, and she used to take her around the rooms of all the other old people that were in the nursing home just so that they could, be with Gertie. Well, every time we went up there, this particular nurse would come in and take Gertie off and take her in all the other rooms so people could see her and pat her.
Animal-assisted therapy is... It is recognized, especially in hospice, and most hospitals are, they're coming around to that. So it's unfortunate that Sunny wasn't allowed to see her dogs in their last days, but she's visiting them now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish hospitals would sort of lighten up around that, but you do.
I've been thinking a lot about her family, about Joe, her husband, and daughter and grandchild, so I hope they're well.
Connie, have you talked to her husband?
Yes, I talked to him at the hospital twice. I don't have his phone number, but if I call Sonny's phone, he'll be answering her phone. I haven't checked on him. I've talked with Martha. Well, no, I chatted with Martha on Messenger after Sonny went.
Who's Martha?
Martha's a lady down the street, the dog grooming lady.
Okay.
They've been very good friends for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Sheila, let me ask you something. I mean, one of the things, and this is very close to home in this subject. I mentioned that I had earlier reached out, doing a journey, trying to connect with Sunny and asking her about crossing over. Have you ever done that type of work?
Yes. Part of our training is to do rescue work, and for spirits who are stuck between worlds. That's SRI does just a slightly different version of it. So, yes, I remember meditating one time and asking my guides. I said, if someone needs help, I'm here. And and all of a sudden I was transported to literally I felt myself. I think I went out of body to a hospital room, and there's this a young man lying in bed by himself, and I felt very sorry for him. And I said, I'm here, and you're going to be leaving your body soon. You're going to see a brilliant white light. Go towards the light. Don't worry about it. That's where you're supposed to be going, because I just felt this tremendous aloneness. And as soon as I said that, he understood what I said. I got a real sense, even though he was in a coma. And then I was back in my body, and I thought, well, I asked for it. I guess I got it. And about 4 months later, a medium was giving messages, and he didn't know me, and he didn't know what I did. And he said, "Oh, I have a young man here. He wants to say thank you." He said, you came into his hospital room and you helped him to cross over.
Wow.
And I got chills. Yeah, I got chills. And I went, "Oh, I know who that was." So he said he just wants to thank you that you did help. So yeah, we are trained to do that. We are, that is part of our training, and acknowledging. And it's every tradition, like you studied shamanism, and that is part of the shamanic journey to help souls as well.
Yes, yes. That's what I was learning this last year, and which is why I was reaching out to Sunny on that level. But yep, she didn't need help. She was perfectly fine. Nope. So just okay. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Sunny knew the way.
Yep. And Irene, with of course Spirit Rescue International, that's exactly what the title is, was Spirit Rescue, and how many cases do you think you helped in where you had to have spirits help them cross over?
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Oh, hundreds and hundreds. We worked all around the world, didn't we, Sheila?
Yeah.
Literally all around the world. We had a case in Germany once. It was literally all around the world. And I can't count. I really can't count. Like I said, we were doing 28, 30 cases a month.
And then
that wasn't just hauntings. That was all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Literally all sorts of things.
Well, that was like one of the last cases we worked on was that one case where there wasn't a haunting at all. But it was something very unusual, and the client didn't want to hear it. Remember the case?
Oh, that, yeah.
Oh, the land, you mean?
No,
sorry, something else.
Go ahead.
It was a thought form.
Yeah. Okay.
It was this young girl that Mark could explain it better than I can.
Well, this young girl was so deathly afraid that there was something in her house, but she actually had latent abilities. And
PK.
She was manifesting things in the house based on her own fears. And, somebody would give her a suggestion like, you had the witches once, you had a coven of witches used to practice in your basement. Well, never mind the fact she never had a basement. That thought scared her so bad that she started seeing this old hag witch appearing on the stairs, and not just her seeing it, other people would see it too. So it was creating a thought form entity that was based on her fears. Her boyfriend kept saying that, he felt like there was a little boy there. Certain enough, after a while, they started seeing a little boy spirit there. So, now there's also the possibility, but we didn't feel this at the time, that maybe it was there could be cases like that where there's a trickster entity involved that will manifest based on your fears. But we felt very strongly after doing some remote views, after talking to her and looking into the situation, that she was the one manifesting it based on her fears.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And she didn't take it too well when we told her that. She was adamant that it was ghosts and they were there and how dare we, and some people just aren't ready for the truth.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what drives the paranormal in general, because so many things are weirder than people think sometimes. But I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Sheila?
Oh, I was agreeing with you that people with latent PK ability, the poltergeist, and the poltergeist is technically, it's a noisy spirit, as you know, but it's generated by the subconscious of the individual, but you can also have like a trickster spirit joining in the fun, and then it can get pretty violent. When that happens, it's rare, but they're fascinating cases when to actually come across someone who has psychokinetic ability to that extent that they're generating visuals that other people can see.
Yes.
So.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, poltergeist cases are famous. I mean, the early poltergeist cases, now people think poltergeist, we have poltergeist activity. It's, when objects being moved, like not exactly the same thing. It's the original traditional view of poltergeist was PK activity from either a juvenile going through puberty or other person going through very intense emotions at that time and their own energy spiking out. So no real ghost involved in those cases.
I remember my dad, he was a doctor, and he showed me an article in one of his medical journals documenting poltergeist activity. And the first recorded case was back in the Roman times, where furniture was being thrown around, and even back then they suspected that there was an agent, someone who was subconsciously generating this tremendous amount of PK energy. They didn't call it PK energy back then. And he was showing me this article. I'm going, why are you showing me this? Has something been going on in the house? But it was, it was fascinating that even medical journals, had documented this sort of unusual behavior or strange activity. But it's extremely rare, right? So,
wow.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, I you know what? We haven't been paying attention to the time, and it looks like we've just run out of time.
Oh dear.
Irene, are you still there?
Yeah, I am, and there's just one thing I want to say. Sonny, if you can hear me, thanks for bringing the sunshine into everybody's lives, because that's exactly what you did.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Amen.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
she's shining her light over there, for sure.
She's calling me a fucking idiot.
Thank you, Sonny.
Oh.
Running true to form.
Well, I want to thank both Connie and Sheila. Thank you both for coming on the show and sharing your memories and thoughts of Sonny. And this has been a very unusual show for us, but I think it was very touching. And I want to thank you both for coming on and talking.
Well,
Thank
you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And her love goes out to her family.
Yes.
Sonny's family, her husband.
Keep in their prayers.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and thank you for our listeners for listening to another edition of Paranormal UK Radio here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Have a wonderful week. We will catch you next week. Same time, 10 p.m. Greenwich Mean and Eastern Time on Wednesdays here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.